this episode of Executive Insights. Today, I'm joined by Megan Huber. Megan is a client retention and group program leadership specialist who transforms coaches and consultants and experts and their teams into world-class group program facilitators who design and deliver unforgettable experiences so that their clients will remain satisfied and retained and get incredible results and keep coming back for more. So Megan, so excited to have you with me here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to dive in.
Absolutely. I wanted to bring you on to our podcast and let our audience know more about you because you do some things that are very unique as a life and business coach. So let's get started. So Megan, where were you and who were you surrounded by? And what was going on in your life that inspired you to do what you're doing today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always love going back in time and looking at those moments that really shifted my life, just like all of us have had those moments. My background is in education. I was a public school teacher in my 20s, and I taught in the public face-to-face classroom. I was a business education teacher. I also taught online for North Carolina virtual public schools. And what invited me to leave that profession was having our daughter, Brighton, who is now almost 12 years old. So I left the teaching world and, teaching people and leading people has always been a huge passion of mine. And when I left teaching, I didn't have some sort of entrepreneurial idea. I didn't leave because I knew I was going to start a business. And it was being home and honestly kind of not enjoying being home by myself with a baby all the time. I think a lot of women really resonate with that. I was like, I have got to do something. And that led me to coaching. So I got a coaching certification, entered into this coaching expert and consultancy industry. And part of my journey is interesting in that I left my first business to work for another entrepreneur in the coaching industry who already had a very, very successful track record. She already had a very good sized company. I mean, to the point where she's like hiring full-time employees. And I was brought on to create and lead and run her large scale group coaching programs, which was perfect for a former teacher. I had all the skill sets of that. And we were running groups that were as large as 300 people. And these are programs that are year long. These people are spending 5 figures to be part of these programs. As a company, we're spending all this money acquiring all these clients. And I will never forget, we were at our final live event. The women in this program, it was all women. Part of what they got in the program were 4 live events. And we were at the end of their program. We were at the last live event and the owner was on stage and she was inviting them to do this program for another year and stay in the community. And she's a fabulous salesperson, amazing. And I was at the back of the room and we had handed out order forms to everybody. And I'm in the back of the room and I end up having this line of clients in front of me with their blank order forms ready to hand it over to me. And I was like, what is going on? This is very unexpected. And out of that particular group, we had like a little over 200 people, 6 people renewed into that program. And we were shocked. I mean, our jaws were on the floor because that is a nightmare scenario for any business owner, because now you have lost so much money. You're never going to get the money back or the time back that you spent on acquiring all those clients. And I knew that was really the moment that shifted me into paying attention to client retention, because that never should have happened. That could literally send an entrepreneur and a small business like spiraling downward because it's unexpected. And now you literally almost feel like you're starting over all over again. So that's what really opened my eyes up to this entire conversation around client retention, which you barely hear anybody talk about that.
Right. It's, hiring a business coach today is very normal, but what you're doing in terms of retention, we were discussing this before, is that the wash, rinse, and repeat of finding new people is exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And retaining your clients also leads to referral business and, trusted relationships. But why do you think people aren't going that pathway? So I know that you do, but how is what you do different?
Yeah, it's interesting when you work with most business coaches, not all, but many business coaches, when you're looking for programs out there, there is such an emphasis on one half of building a business, and that's marketing and sales. And that's important. You have to have marketing and sales, or you do not have a company at all. Like, you are out of business if you don't have that. And, I'll just speak to what I really see in the coaching industry. And that is this insane emphasis on just make more money, just make more money, just make more money. And who can make the most money?
Right.
And where people are getting so burned out is exactly what you're talking about. It's this launching and constantly going out there to launch, to bring in droves of new people. But then it's sort of like people have this, I guess it's like sort of like a dopamine effect where, I can celebrate all this money that just came in, all these people who just joined my program. But then we forget that it is a lot of work on the other side. I call it back of house or behind the scenes. Yes. And that is the client experience. And in fact, this is an interesting thing for any of the listeners to take note of. Any new client who's working with you, obviously they have to trust you to a degree to buy from you. But, all of us are buyers, all of us are consuming. And when we purchase something, we are, you kind of have to regain our trust all over again as a client now. Right. And when a client is working with your company or with you, that client makes their decision within the first 90 days of working with you, if they are going to renew with you in the future or not. Right. So you may have some sort of year-long working relationship with them, but they're actually deciding in the first 90 days if they're going to keep working with you after that. So if you're waiting till the end of their contract, when their contract is over, and that's when you're inviting them to renew, or that's when you're first having that conversation, you lost them 9 months ago, if it's a year-long engagement. And that is costing people so much energy, time, money, relationships. You're really burning a lot of bridges when you're not focusing on this. And I really love anything simple and sustainable. And if we want to look at what makes a company sustainable, it's your ability to have some pretty predictable monthly recurring revenue, which is not just going to come from making new sales. That monthly recurring revenue becomes sustainable and reliable because you have people who are staying with you for years.
Right. Right. And it's not just burnout, it's disheartening to have to start all over again. And you're staying in the operations side of things instead of I would say in the good place, in the good stuff that you like to do. Maybe it's being on stage, maybe it's presentation work, all that. But it's like that piece that you just, you have to do. But I'm curious, what would you recommend as your top 3 success secrets to making this happen?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I know we're talking about business here and we're talking about client retention, but I would say the number one most important thing is you got to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your mind. You have to take care of your body. You really do have to put your own mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health first. Because when you do, here's what that's impacting as well from a business perspective. It's impacting your ability to think clearly. It's impacting your ability to be a more effective communicator. It's impacting your ability to make really smart decisions that are going to move you forward. It's impacting your ability to feel more happiness and more joy. Business shouldn't be this grueling thing that you resent on a daily basis, right? It should be really fun. It should be enjoyable. That doesn't mean you're not going to experience setbacks, but the more we can take care of ourselves and we can take care of our bodies and our minds, when those setbacks do occur, we're going to be able to bounce back up more quickly. And I really do think, like, for any business owner that has been around for 10 plus years, which very few even get to, they're there because they have the ability to bounce back faster. They're falling down all the time. They're falling down just as much as everybody else. They have this ability to bounce back quickly from it. It doesn't take them out of the game. So I would say that is really important. You know, from a client retention perspective, or even employee retention perspective, it's communication. Communication is so important. I remember when I worked for the coaching company that I worked for, that was one of the things that, you know, as a team, we were having conversations around, that most of the gaps and most of the things that were falling through the cracks in the company, it was due to a lack of communication. And when you really look at client retention, and keeping in mind, clients are making a decision in the first 90 days if they're going to continue working with you or not. That is largely based on the way in which you are communicating with them. It's the same thing with employees. And as business owners who are delivering products and services, especially coaches and consultants, we think, okay, they bought the product, they just want the thing now. They want the information. They want the thing that they purchased. And yes, all of us do want the thing that we purchased, but again, you've got to really understand how adults learn. And you also need to understand that adults, all of us, are extremely overwhelmed. And the reason why any consumer is working with anybody, service or product, it's because they want to relieve their level of overwhelm. So if we're just delivering the thing, we're not actually taking into consideration, well, what motivates that person to use the thing that I just gave them? Because if our client isn't using the product or using the service, they're not getting a benefit from it. In their mind, there's no value to what you're offering. So it's very important that we're communicating effectively to the clients. Why are we using this? What is, you know, when you implement this product or this service, what's it going to provide to you on the other side? So when you take action, what's life going to look like on the other side? Exactly. And you can't just say that at the marketing level. You can't just remind them of that one time. You have to do that over and over and over and over again, because the minute that the client doesn't see value in what they're offering because they're not using it, it's almost impossible to get them back. So I would say those two things, we could keep going, but those two things are probably like the most important.
Right. And, you know, that kind of leads to, you know, things to avoid. And you kind of touched on some of those, but what would you say are two or three things that you would recommend that they avoid based on your experiences?
Okay, good question there too. You know, I was just having a conversation with a client of mine earlier today, and, you know, I kind of stopped us midway through our conversation. And I said, you know, are you really clear on the type of business model that you are creating here? And my follow-up question to her was, are you creating a business model that really suits your personality? And that is something that I have seen happen a lot to people, especially in the coaching and consulting industries. There's a lot of options. You know, you can have courses, you can consult people one-on-one, you can have groups, you can have big teams, you can have small teams. And I think sometimes we are lured into operating and building our companies in a particular way because we think, well, that way is the way that it's going to make me the most money. But then we insert ourselves into that and we realize, now I'm super burned out. Now I'm super exhausted. Now I'm really frustrated with my clients. I'm very frustrated with my team. And this personality piece is something I've been studying now for about a year. And I really do believe, based on experience and research with my own clients and companies that I work with, oftentimes there's a mismatch between the business model and also the type of client you're attracting and your personality. And it can kind of suck the life out of you. So I think that's really important for business owners to acknowledge and to own and be aware of. This is a business model. This is the marketing and sales system that works best for my personality, and just really own that. So I would say trying to box yourself into something that doesn't suit your personality it's a big miss. It's a big mistake. The other one too, that I see, and I'm sure you see as well with a lot of entrepreneurs, it's very easy to dive in and bury yourself in your work and bury yourself in striving to reach particular goals. And I cannot tell you how many families I have seen crumble as a result of that. And I think it's, family is something that's really important to me. And, I'm married, we have a daughter together who's almost 12, but, whether you are the male or the female in the relationship, it doesn't really matter. But if we aren't emotionally available to our partner and to our spouse, it really starts to create a distance. You can even create a distance with your children. So I think no matter how successful you become in your business, no matter how successful you want to be, your family is something that is always going to be there for you. The business may not always be there. The clients may not always be there. But entrepreneurship is already kind of a lonely path to be walking. Yeah. It can become even more lonely if our families are dismantling right before us, but we are the ones creating that. And that is something I personally have really had to turn around in my own life, because I will be the first one to say I can ignore my family like the best of them for the sake of, I've got to work on my business. I have to, move things along. I have to reach these goals. And then I'm over here shortchanging my family. And that's just not an enjoyable way to exist. So, really balancing life.
That's a pitfall. It is. And I think we don't intend for that to happen. But it sounds very much like what you have said, and sort of a motto of your business model is soul first and strategy second, correct? It's the human aspect of this first, and coming out of the gate with that and aligning your personality isn't just about balance. It's about enjoying the process. Why are you doing what you're doing in the first place? And but it's a slippery slope, how to balance that. So I'm really, really glad you're taking this approach to the pitfalls to avoid and to the success secrets. It's all about the person. And I think that's a difference maker with you. I think that's very unique and different. And I appreciate that very much. So how can people get in touch with you, Megan?
Yeah, the best place is my website, meganjohnsonhuber.com. That's where you can find my podcasts. You can find out how I work with people. My blog's over there. So that's home base.
Great. And we'll have all of that in our description below the video. So any last final words of advice for our podcast audience today?
Yeah, well, since I'm the client retention specialist, I'm going to say, put more emphasis on that. Really think about how your clients want to feel. I mean, that really is the name of the game. Look, all of us have products and services to deliver. Everybody's coming to us because they want a result, right? Like, it's the whole thing, sell them what they want, give them what they need. And it can be easy to forget that we're all working with human beings, and you will keep a client for life because you make them feel a certain way. So figure out what's the feeling you really want to help people create inside of themselves, whether it's confidence or joy or happiness or freedom, but identify that feeling and literally build all of your communication, all of your structures, everything around creating this feeling for people, and you will literally have a customer for life.
Awesome. Wow, this has been an incredible podcast with you, Megan. I really appreciate all of this insight. I know our audience does as well. And I'd love to have you back on another time if you're open to that.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode today of Executive Insights. Until next time, have a great day.